I was blown away when the House of the Dead got remade for Nintendo Switch 3 years ago. I have hours and many quarters worth of memories of going to my county fair back in the early 2000s and blowing zombies away in the cabinets for House of the Dead 1 and 2. A lot of people criticized the remake, but I loved it. Now we've got a remake of the sequel here on Switch along with many other platforms. There is a gigantic amount of criticism from die-hard fans that act like this is the worst thing that's ever been created. But let's dive in and see what's here, as I personally have been having a blast playing it just like with the first. Here is my review of the House of the Dead 2 remake for Nintendo Switch along with backwards compatibility for Nintendo Switch 2. This plot takes place in the year 2000, 2 years after the Curian incident, aka House of the Dead 1. AMS agents are sent on a mission where a city's been overrun by zombies and mutant abominations once again. When Agent G is injured, they venture across the city to track down the source of the incident and put a stop to it. The story here is very light, just like it was in the original. There are some references thrown in here, like G making appearances throughout the campaign, along with the theme of resurrections, which would repeat in many more games of the series past this one. But just like the original, it's got intentionally corny voice acting. The demon that talks to you at the start is so distorted and high-pitched that I had to go back to the original to remember he sounded just as ridiculous back then. When it comes to gameplay, this is a first-person rail shooter. Like the first remake and the original, you progress through stages that have the camera moving automatic, and you use a reticle to shoot down zombies and monsters, along with pretty much everything in the background in the hopes of finding a power-up or unlockable weapon. The first thing to note here are game modes. There's no horde mode like with the first remake, but we have two versions of playing original or campaign. You also have boss mode that allows you to re-challenge each boss or all of them in a boss rush. And finally, we have training mode that has you doing challenges for different aspects of the game, like saving NPCs or taking out enemies with limited ammo. When it comes to features, do note that the performance mode of the first game's remake is not in this game. We do still have gyro motion aim for the reticle, but we do not have a feature for the Switch 2's mouse mode. And finally, we've got a really nice feature in the ability to swap between the remake and original arcade game's soundtrack. When diving in, this is a somewhat one-to-one remake of the original House of the Dead 2. When you first begin, you choose a loadout of items to take with you. These include power-ups and choosing one unlocked weapon to take with your pistol. Sadly, you cannot cycle through all of the extra weapons like you could in House of the Dead 1 remake, but you just choose your favorite. Once you're loaded in, the stages play out pretty much the same as before. You have the camera moving you automatically and use a reticle controlled with gyro or the buttons to shoot down zombies and move on. You'll also be shooting down crates and barrels in the background that hold power-ups and permanently unlocked weapons like the crossbow or machine gun. The core experience is definitely here, from moving through each stage and having NPCs to be able to rescue for getting extra health and power-ups, and fighting off cool-looking bosses that have a specific weak point. But there are changes here. Obviously, the graphics and visuals have been completely overhauled. A few bosses have changes to their designs, like higher offense armor around their heart, a bit smaller and more flush with its body, and Magician Type 0 no longer having its leg parts glowing red. Some of the bosses also act a little different, like Magician having significantly faster speed, and the Strength boss oddly having one of its moves not show up in the remake. We also have some small changes in things that show up in the different routes. The child NPCs you could save are now adult models. The secret rooms that let you shoot doors, like in the alleyway of Stage 2 to visit an NPC that gives you an unlockable, seem to no longer be there. And there's a little bit of missing dialogue, like the final quote from Magician seeming to be missing, yet the player character's response to that quote is still here in the remake. Possibly a mistake that they could re-add in a future patch. Some of these changes have a counterbalance. The hidden doors were mostly there to unlock weapons like the assault rifle and grenade launcher. In the remake, you unlock these weapons by shooting down specific barrels or crates in the backgrounds of the levels. These boxes do work on RNG, but they have multiple weapons tied to them and are consistent unlocks for the weapons. To help you along, let's take a look at two of them. This box on a rooftop in episode 2's Prevent the Car Crash route reliably unlocked me the crossbow, pitter, and assault rifle, while this box in the clock tower behind the chainsaw zombie unlocked the machine gun for me. All of which you can look at in the secret lab in the main menu, which showcases monster designs, descriptions, and all of these unlocked items. Now, if you look online, you will be led to believe that this makes the game a complete dumpster fire that feels nothing like the original game and something that never should have been made. I will admit that I haven't touched this game since those arcade cabinets back in the early 2000s. But while I played through the remake, I was constantly remembering and recalling things as I went, and was so overhyped when things like the monkeys or frogs showed up that immediately sparked those memories. The changes here are all pretty small, and when I played through it, it never stopped feeling like the same House of the Dead 2 I played all those years ago. Now let's go into content and length. Being an arcade rail shooter, a single run of this game can be completed in just under an hour. In my trek through the game of playing through on both Switch consoles and then unlocking weapons until I got the assault rifle and grenade launcher, I'd been playing for around 10 hours total. To dive into controls for a moment, nothing much has changed here since the first remake. By default, the B button is now the fire button instead of A, and the gyro motion controls for the Joy-Cons are still all over the place. Without support for the Switch 2's mouse mode, the gyro is very sensitive and I found it difficult to keep steady aim, opting to just use the controller button support. But one thing I'll say is that if you use the regular button controls, this game has superb aim assist. In fact, it's so good that it can actually break the game's difficulty. Many bosses attack in the same place during their patterns, so much so that in a couple of the boss fights, you can leave the cursor in one spot on the screen and just spam the fire button and you won't get hit very often at all. It doesn't work in every boss fight, but it's a bit surprising at how often it does. Next up is presentation, which I think looks pretty decent, especially in docked mode. As a remake, the graphics were completely overhauled. After I saw all those comments online about how the graphics were allegedly worse than the original, I went back to see and, well, you can see the night and day difference here. It's got different colors, but the remake has immensely more advanced and detailed models. As far as the overall visuals, the game I think looks fine on Switch, having some jaggies around the models here and there while we get a bit of a slight blur when going into handheld mode. And these visuals are the same on Switch too. When we get to performance, I was pretty worried when I first booted up the game and saw the really big frame drops on those cinematics when you get to the title screen. Thankfully, that is way worse than the actual gameplay. On the original Nintendo Switch, all of the gameplay is unfortunately choppy from start to finish. It tries to work its way around the 30 to 50 FPS range, but it's very inconsistent from the very beginning. The cinematics, shooting, gameplay, etc. It's certainly playable on Switch 1, but without a performance mode, it's very choppy and frame drop heavy. Switch 2 fixes this, just as it fixed the first game's remake, bringing House of the Dead 2 to a smooth and consistent 60 frames per second. There are a few little blemishes here and there, like zombies coming out of the waterfall in stage 5, or some transitions for the camera that drop frames for a split second. But overall, it's a fantastic experience on Switch 2. That brings us to battery life. On the original and light models, House of the Dead 2 Remake gets a battery range of about 3 to 3.5 hours. The V2 and OLED models get 6 to 8 hours, while the Nintendo Switch 2 gets around 2 hours and 50 minutes. In conclusion, House of the Dead 2 makes its way from arcade cabinets to handhelds in a remake that is mostly faithful to its original experience. Now, on the downside, there are some changes to design, dialogue, and how you unlock secret weapons. The gyro controls are still all over the place with sensitivity, and the Switch 1's performance is very inconsistent. But if you have a Switch 2 and don't mind the changes, it's not a bad game. A little different, but it's still House of the Dead 2. Reviews to Go rates House of the Dead 2 Remake for the Nintendo Switch a 7 out of 10. If you have any comments or questions, feel free to leave them below. Thank you for watching, and have a great day.